Hey, good afternoon, guys, and welcome back to Answers on Eschatology. My name is Dan Derry, and I am the president of the Institute of Fulfilled Eschatology. We are back in Acts chapter 1 today, and we're going to continue to share some thoughts with you and further establish the fact that the second coming of the Lord in Acts chapter 1 was not and is not, prophetic of a future bodily, visible return of Jesus Christ. Okay? It was prophetic of his second coming in AD 70 in glory, in power, with the clouds, and with salvation, with blessing. Okay? And if you recall from last video, we established that the emphasis, okay, of Acts 1, the emphasis of that going was not in a body. Okay? As a matter of fact, we showed you from Luke 24, which is a parallel text, Acts 1, 9 to 11, and also from 1 Timothy 3:16, that the emphasis of Jesus' ascension in Scripture is never on a body. And therefore, the emphasis is not his return in a body. Nowhere in Scripture do any second coming text speak of a bodily return. Nowhere, okay? And that's not the emphasis of Acts 1 either. So, Acts 1, 9 to 11, the emphasis is on his cloud ascension, okay, which is the glory cloud. It's on his being received up into glory. That's his kingdom. That's his being enthroned, the initiation of his kingdom, and his blessing his disciples as he left. That's his leaving and blessing. And in just the same way as he left in the cloud with glory, and with blessing, he was going to come, the angels tell the disciples, okay? That means Christ would come in glory, in the cloud, and with blessing, with salvation. And that's exactly what we find in several New Testament texts regarding the second coming of Jesus. And those texts place that second coming in the first century. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to marry the elements of Acts chapter 1 and his ascension with the elements found in the other New Testament texts regarding his return. And we're going to show you that those elements are placed in the context of a first century return of Jesus Christ. Okay, so time dictates nature. If we can identify the timing of the fulfillment of these elements and his coming, we will have identified the nature of his coming. That is, not in a body, but in a presence, a spiritual and a covenantal coming of the Lord in AD 70. Let's do this. Acts chapter 1, verse 9 to 11, the first element and the first emphasis that we're going to look at and place a time limitation on from Scripture is Jesus' cloud ascension, his coming in the clouds. Now watch this. Acts chapter 1 and verse 9 to 11. And after he had said these things, he was lifted up while they were looking on, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And as they were gazing intently into the sky, while he was going, behold, two men in white clothing stood beside them. They also said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking into heaven? This Jesus who has been taken up from you into heaven will come in just the same way as you have watched him go into heaven. How they watched him go? What was the emphasis? The cloud. They watched him in a cloud, received him out of their sight, and they are told, hey, just as you saw him go in that cloud, he's going to come in a cloud. Well, let's look at what Scripture, at a text in Scripture that talks about a cloud coming of Jesus, and see where Scripture places, when Scripture places that coming. Go with me to Matthew chapter 24, a very familiar text, I'm sure to all of you. And you probably already know where I'm going before I get there. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 30. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. That's the return of Jesus, the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds. Just as he left on the cloud, he would come in the cloud. And by the way, this is just kind of thrown in there. This is based on Daniel chapter 7, the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, okay? And Daniel 7 places that coming on the clouds in the first century, at least in the time of the fourth beast, the Roman Empire, which existed and which was in power in the first century. Okay, so besides that though, Matthew chapter 24 places this cloud coming of Jesus, just as he left in a cloud, here's his return in a cloud. And in verse 34 of Matthew 24, Jesus places that cloud coming in the lifetime of his first century generation. Jesus says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." That cloud coming, that cloud return of Jesus, the glory cloud coming, of course. See, notice the text says, he will come, the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the heaven with power and great glory. This is the Shekinah glory cloud. It's the presence of Jehovah in the person of his Son coming in judgment and in salvation, which I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's exactly what this is all about. This is the imagery, again, from Daniel 7. But the point is, once again, we wanted to demonstrate in this video that just as Jesus left in the cloud, he came in the clouds. And Jesus placed that cloud coming, okay, in fulfillment of the prophecy of Acts 1, 9 to 11, in the lifetime of his first century disciples, in their generation. Therefore, Acts 1, 9 to 11, and that second coming is not a future to us bodily return of Jesus. It was an AD 70 coming, when he came in the glory, Shekinah presence of Jehovah, in the lifetime of his first century disciples. Well, we got more as we look at the rest of the elements of Acts 1, 9 to 11 next time on Answers on Eschatology. Bye for now.